Greetings and welcome to Jesse I Interviews, a podcast that aims to contribute to the oral history of reggae and dancehall music by preserving the many interviews that I've conducted over the last few decades. I'm Jesse I, and I produce this podcast on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the original and rightful owners of these lands, which are now known as Melbourne, Australia. This episode is a natural follow-on from the last one, as it's also taken from the same radio program, which went to air on PBS FM back in November 2010. It features Harrison Stafford, the lead singer of the American band Groundation, a very interesting person and an amazing band. You'll hear a bit of music play over the interview at one point. That's because someone in the second PBS studio was getting ready to come on air after me, and they forgot to switch off their on-air feed before warming up. Thankfully, it doesn't last too long though, and it doesn't spoil what I think is a good and interesting interview. Let's get into it. Jesse I interviews Harrison Stafford of Groundation back in November 2010. With me right now, I'm joined by Harrison Stafford, the lead singer of Groundation, one of the greatest roots reggae bands in the world today. Harrison, thank you very much for joining me here on Babylon Burning.
Yes, man. My pleasure to be here, brother.
Look, for those that don't know the history of Groundation, can you tell us a little about the band, how the group came together?
Yeah, sure. We formed back in 1998. We actually all met at university. We were getting our jazz degrees in Northern California, Sonoma State University. So we kind of had music in our background since we were all young kids, and we loved it so much that that's what we wanted to surround our lives with. And when I went to university to study jazz music, Marcus Urani on the keyboard, Ryan Newman on the bass, the original drummer James Stafford, and Kelsey Howard on trombone, and we had a definite connection. And a couple years into university, I called up Ryan, the bass man, and I said, Ryan, it's time for us to do something special, something unique, something that is just us. And since I come from that roots reggae background, it was going to be kind of cemented. The cornerstone of the music was going to be one drop, roots reggae music, which we thought had a lot of openness to the sound, a lot of room for creative growth and things like that. So we began this kind of fusion project, and the first rehearsal we had, I walked into the room and I said, Ryan, what do you think of the name Groundation? He said, that's it, for sure. So from that point on, 1998, Groundation started, and from then on, 7 albums later, and we've gone around the world many, many times throughout North Africa, Middle East, Europe, South America, USA, and thankful to say that here we are, finally touching down in Australia.
Yeah, well, that's it. We're really looking forward to the show here. It's been a long time coming. You mentioned that your background is in reggae. I wanted to ask you, how did you actually get into reggae music?
I got into roots reggae music actually from my older brother. My older brother was listening to things like Black Uhuru, Culture, Abyssinians, Bob Marley, when he was going through like middle school time. So from when I was about maybe 7 years old or so, that was my music. I had every Bob Marley album, every Israel Vibration, Culture, the Congos, all these different groups. And, I felt a vibe because at the same time I was growing up in the temple. My family is Jewish. Right. So we would drive about an hour or so to go to the local temple, since at that time there wasn't many Jewish people in the East Bay area where I was growing up. So we'd have to travel a long way, go to temples. So, when I listened to Bob Marley sing about Exodus and the movement of Jah people and Moses and Aaron and talking about Joshua and Solomon and David, it was the same thing I was studying as a kid. So it really it kind of connected and made sense to me, and I loved it.
Right. I wanted to ask you about that because obviously reggae is seen by a lot of people around the world as Rasta music, even though reggae and Rasta are actually two different things. They don't necessarily, or they're not necessarily intrinsically linked, but a lot of people just make the assumption that reggae music is Rasta music, and I think some people would even make that assumption about Groundation's music. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly it is definitely infused with the whole Rasta thought, the whole belief that Rasta is not a religion. Rasta is for all people. Rasta's backbone is in the principal teachings of what they would say is Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie, the Emperor of Ethiopia. And his teachings were death to black and white oppressors. So the whole thing of Rasta and the whole thing of Groundation is trying to be, kind of flowing against the stream. This modern world is looking for corporate interest and big money and kind of using citizens and people in third world countries as just numbers for their economic base. You're always fighting against that. You're always fighting for equality, fighting for justice and love, and that is what the Rasta is all about. The reason why the Rasta grew the dreadlocks and started talking the Ayent language like Bob used in Belly Full, Yada Yud, but the Yud not enough. The pot I cook, but the food is not enough. The whole reason was to separate themselves and say, no, man, we disagree with the way the world is going. We want to see the world progress, maybe not in a modern building skyscrapers to the sky sense, but in a very human, social reality, which is what we're dealing with. So I'm not here to say I am Rasta and Rasta is the way. We as Groundation are here to say, no matter what you are, whatever religion, whatever background you are, music is there. Music is that uniting light. Music is the most high, as we say in the album We Free Again. That is really the principal teachings of Groundation, which certainly can mirror the Rasta thought.
Right. Well, reggae music has always been dominated by singles releases, but Groundation's music is obviously written with a sense of a bigger picture, and I know a lot of your releases have actually been referred to as concept albums, which is a term we don't hear much these days. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as we look at albums, we look at them as kind of paintings that you're going to put on your wall for the rest of your life, something that's supposed to have a lot of meaning and thought and beauty behind it. So comes the concept album, the concept that each song is related, that the first song to the last song tells a story through the whole album. And we have done this with our work, not only with each album, the first album being Young Tree, Each One Teach One, Hebron Gate, We Free Again, Upon the Bridge, Here I Am Now. But each album also connects to each other. From Young Tree through Upon the Bridge, it is telling one story of the individual's struggle through life. Young Tree is all about the concept of the individual. Each One Teach One is all about the concept of your elders, of the fact that you're connected to this whole web of history that goes beyond you and me. As you and I are talking here, we are, if we retrace our steps, we are family. So Each One Teach One. Hebron Gate is talking about this good and evil that is inside everybody, even ourselves, and we're trying to dominate. We're trying to be good over evil. We're trying to get out those ideas of vanity and greed. We Free Again is that real battle for the soul. Now that you know about the positive and negative, which way you're going to go. And Upon the Bridge is finally the struggle to try and find a new world, a new way, to try and hopefully bring our modern moment into a better positive light. And that is all of the albums connected tell that story, while at the same time each album is a concept in itself from the beginning to the last.
Right.
I think it's very important, I think it makes it much more food for thought than just random songs hoping for a hit somewhere.
Yeah, well, speaking of the family, you mentioned there, you've actually worked with some of the real legends of the reggae family, guys like Don Carlos, Pablo Moses, Ras Michael, Ayaman, Apple Gabriel, and Cedric Myton. Can you tell us about how some of these collaborations have come about? Yeah,
for sure. I've been traveling to Jamaica there from a very young age, from the time of Peter's death and all those things in the late 80s. And there was a connection between the fact that I was this Jew-Israeli background to the whole Bible and the Old Testament and these things. And so I was really welcomed in a lot of these places. And so I met these people like Congo, Cedric Myton, the late lead singer of Culture, Joseph Hill, was a huge influence on me growing up as a young kid and yet a young man. And what better way to really learn about the music than to have them, if they would accept it, to come on our albums and do it. And so when I talk to people like Don Carlos and people like this, Apple Gabriel from Israel Vibration, Ijaman, they definitely understand the Groundation spirit. They know they're not going to be on some slackness song or some party song. They know we're going to come with some real music, with some real musicians playing it. And for us, it's a kind of a view into these people who are in their 60s who have put up this huge musical fight for their whole life. So the moment you get down and you get discouraged and say, man, the music is going slow, I wish it was more popular and this and that. But then you come across these guys like, Ashanti Roy, who's almost 70 now.
Right.
And he's still in the same fight. He's still doing it with a smile on his face. So it makes you say, okay, I have to give my life to this. I have to be a part of this. And there is no turning back. There is no, we tried, it didn't work,
Yep.
And these people really instill that, really put that energy into our music.
Right. Well, I've actually got a Groundation sweatshirt that has a quote on the back which reads, "Preserving the history and integrity of reggae music." And I guess this is one way that Groundation does it, working with these veteran artists and keeping them alive in modern-day reggae music. But how else would you say Groundation and maybe Young Tree Records does this?
Well, I mean, as Young Tree, we have done releases of albums that might not have been commercially successful, but things like Pablo Moses' album, Paved the Way. This is an album that was on LP years and years ago. It was never put on cassette tape, never on CD. And with my friendship with Pablo Moses, I was able to get way back to the original quarter-inch analog tapes and get them into Jim Fox's hand in Washington, D.C., and have him go through it all so that he basically put together the album, as it was flaking off because the tape had been sitting so long. He has to bake the tape.
Right.
And he would go, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, inch by inch, clean the tape off, clean the heads off, go again, and basically brought that album back to life, which I am extremely proud of. And I feel it's a great, great record. So people like Pablo Moses, the Congos, Winston Jarrett. There's also a longtime friend of mine, Andrew Basie Campbell, who is part of the West Kingston downtown, the kind of ghetto singers and whatnot. And we've released 2 of his records, just producing different singers that no one knows about and no one's heard about. So that is a big part of trying to keep that integrity of the music alive. Also the fact that Groundation, we don't do any synthesized synthetic horns, synthetic drums and bass. And I don't know, if you were to go to Jamaica right now and buy, the top 10 albums in Jamaica, I wonder how much one-drop music, one-drop really is the most original aspect of Jamaican popular music. Dancehall music, the whole bum, 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 it's really a Cuban rhythm. It's not necessarily born in Jamaica. But that one-drop really created an identity that was Jamaican. And that would be found in Bob Marley's music. It's kind of a halftime music. Rock and roll, you hear a lot of backbeat where the kick drum goes on one. It goes... But same tempo in reggae, just... almost gives you a cut time feel, which is very different. And we honor that. And we stick to those rhythms, even when we kind of fuse all this polyrhythmic harmonic stuff that we come from. So it really keeps a much more Jamaican, a much more reggae feel to the music.
Right. Respect. Hey, I wanted to ask you about your singing style. It's a very unique style. How did you learn to sing, and where did you sort of find this voice?
That's a good question, man. I guess you learn to sing throughout your whole life. My voice is always evolving and always trying to stretch different boundaries. I have been singing forever. Long before I started playing guitar, I was singing as a little kid, singing Bob Marley's music, singing patois music, singing Jamaican music. So that really kind of came natural to me when I start singing. That's kind of the style that I do, you know. And from all the way up, I really enjoy singers that try to push themselves. I don't like hearing singers that play it safe. Mm-hmm. So I'm always trying to sing higher than I ever sang and lower than I ever sang, right, as far as the range, and trying to create different timbres, you know. I love Bob Marley's screeching wail, as I love Thomas Mafumo from Zimbabwe's, you know, haunting kind of, you know, the way he rides the rhythms and things. You know, even people like Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, a whole different style of music, but the man goes for it. Right. And you can hear it in his voice, and that's what I really love. I love hearing singers on the edge. So that's a little kind of a bit as to why people seem to think or seem to hear my voice as a very unique and different kind of thing. Mm.
Well, we're running out of time, but I have to ask, obviously, you know, this is the first tour to Australia. Like I said, it's been a long time coming. You've actually you've been in the country for a little while as we speak, though. You've done a bunch of shows up north, Queensland and New South Wales. How have you found the reception so far in Australia?
The Australian people have been great, man. Brilliant. You know, the land and the beauty of the actual country itself is apparent as you're driving around. But really, the beauty is in its people. You know, we have never really come across, and we've said it many times on the trip, never really come across so many people predominantly with such a positive energy. You know, it really comes off in the Australian public, and so far it's been a blessing. And you know, we have 2 more shows there, and you know, we're looking forward to these next 2 shows, and hoping they don't go by too fast, because the Australian people have certainly put something special in us.
That's good to hear, man. Well, we're a little starved for the real deal down here, so I think people are really excited and appreciative of the sounds that you're bringing us. And we look forward to seeing you here in Melbourne at the Australian World Music Expo. What can people expect? People that have never seen Groundation live before, what are they going to see this night?
Man, expect the unexpected, man. Expect to hear a reggae band that you've never heard before. I guarantee if you've been going to hear Abyssinians and Steel Pulses and Black Uhurus and all that, I guarantee when you hear Groundation, you're going to hear something very different. Group improvisation. All of the musicians take their center stage and get to lead the sound. It's very dynamic, much more dynamic than any reggae show I've personally seen. And you know, we always play different music, different songs. We didn't put together a 90-minute set and perfect it, and we go around the world playing the same night, same thing. We play off all the albums, all the songs. So expect, you know, wildness, my friend.
All right, wicked. All right, before I let you go, is there any last message you want to pass on to the Melbourne listeners?
I do think, actually, a couple of days from now, I think in Melbourne, after we play, I believe that my documentary film, Holding On to Jah, is premiering somewhere. The director, Roger Hall, just told me this maybe a few weeks ago. But if you go to holdingontojah.com, you will see a documentary film on the history of the Rastafari movement as told by the people who lived it. And that was produced by me. So it's, I believe, premiering in Australia, Melbourne, maybe the next day after I leave.
I'll try and find out more about that and let the people know.
Check out where that. I mean, I don't even know where it's playing. But, you know, as far as leaving something for the people, just let them know that in this life, in this time, this is only a beginning. This is not the end. There is much more life to be had, much more greater things to achieve in this life, and you know, no matter how dark the world may be, that's the moment where the light shines brightest. So just hang on in there.
Yeah, man. Give thanks. Thanks for speaking to us, Harrison.
Yes, brother. No problem. Thank you for the time.
Harrison Stafford there from Groundation. And I looked into that film screening. I think he's a little bit confused. It's happening in Perth, not Melbourne. But hopefully we'll get that film down here before too long. Of course, you can see Groundation tonight at the Hi-Fi Bar in the city, part of the Australian World Music Expo. Groundation alongside Stone Love, Stevie from Roots Underground, Mr. Savona, Diafrix, Chandown Sound, and Troublemaker early as well. It's a big one tonight. Right now, this is another one from Groundation. This is the tune he mentioned in that interview, Music is the Most High, from the CD We Free Again on Young Tree Records. Groundation right here. Harrison Stafford of Groundation, speaking to me there back in November 2010. That's it for another episode. If you enjoy the podcast and you'd like to support it, please check out the Patreon page over at patreon.com/Jesse_I_interviews. You can sign up as a patron for as little as a few bucks a month. On that note, big love to the patrons, the Don Armageddon Time, the Real General Empress Irie, me Idrin Tom Taniki, and Michaji DJ Pablito. Thanks for listening. Eyes every time.